story exists within this sphere. So as we talk today, I would like to kind of have you sort of thinking of this question. What's decolonizing about the garden for 2S LGBTQIA folks? So just sort of have that as your filter, as you're looking at what we've accomplished in the last 3 years of the Rainbow Garden. And I thought I would tell you a little bit about my food story. So I have a podcast called Food Stories, first of all. And I believe that everybody has a food story. We all use food to connect. I'm a chef, I'm a nutritionist, and I did my master's thesis on the barriers to food literacy education for transgender youth specifically. Super niche, I know that. But niche because I have a transgender son. And in about 2015, when he came out and we were trying to figure his life out, I'm the kind of mom that always had people in my kitchen because I'm a cook. And his friends would come over and we would all cook together, and I started to sort of just notice anecdotally that the more those kids at 15, 16 years old connected through food, the more alive they became in their eyes. Does that make sense? There was something there, right? And the thing is, like I said, no matter where you're from in the world, what gender, what culture, doesn't matter. We all use food to connect. We use food to grieve, we use food to celebrate, we use food to feel secure. Sometimes we abuse food, but food is a part of all of our lives. So when I could, I went back to school and studied that. And here, oh, this is supposed to be muted. So this is just a little photo of me before my master's. I am at a school in Hollywood, California, and I'm doing a class on food security. So just teaching little kids at a big school in Hollywood. Most of them were Spanish speaking, didn't speak English at all, about the different colors of the rainbow, where their food came from. And there was probably about 400 kids there that day, and we just did cooking classes all day long. And this is right before my son came out, like right around 2013-ish. And I remember coming back from the United States and going, oh, like it's so sad that none of those kids had even seen cauliflower before. Like, they were so amazed about cantaloupe. Because they lived in the middle of Hollywood. And if you've ever been to Hollywood, it's not nice, right? It's low-income place. It's a food desert, right? So meaning no food grows around that area. And a lot of these kids were eating the same thing every single day. And so I was like, oh, we're so lucky here in Canada that we don't have those same problems as they do in Los Angeles, the breadbasket of America. Except I was so wrong. The food security rates in Calgary are just as high, if not higher. 1 in every 4 families is food insecure. 1 in every 3 students is food insecure, right? But Calgary's weird because we're all very segregated here, aren't we? So, you know, the rich people kind of live in one area, the people that struggle with income and getting food kind of live in another area. This isn't a very blended city. And I came from the southwest of Calgary as a middle income, you know, mom with 2 kids. So my thing was like, oh, every kid around here can afford food. Well, that's not the case, and that's what I learned. So I took that knowledge, and in this video here, this is my thesis video. So I did my graduate thesis during COVID, so sadly I couldn't do any in-person cooking classes. So I did online cooking classes for a group of transgender youth. And our findings were pretty spectacular. It kind of maybe seems so kind of like duh, but the biggest finding from my thesis research was that when a person feels valued, when they have a sense of worth, then they will seek to access food literacy programming. Food literacy, learning about food, learning how to cook, learning how to garden, right? Learning what to do with food and where to get it. So, but you could develop the best cooking program, the best, you know, curriculum possible, but if a kid doesn't feel like they're worth it, they're not gonna seek that program out, even if it's free. They're not gonna get on transit because they don't feel that they're worth having that education. So worth and value became a huge part of my lens and my understanding, especially within the trans community, of what food needs to be. It needs to be a something, a community, a sense where people can feel safe and valued. So my kids grew up. My son is doing great. He's working on his PhD at Dalhousie. He's the librarian for Symphony Nova Scotia. He's a happy, healthy, well-adjusted kid. He's great. My daughter goes here. She's great. But guess what? They both left. And here I was, a single mother, now just like a single person all alone. And I thought, okay, I have this knowledge. I'm sitting on a very powerful set of skills that I could now help give back to my community now that my kids are gone, right? So I thought, what should I do? I'm kind of bored. And in 2023, I aligned with Highfield Regenerative Farm. Have you heard of Highfield Regenerative Farm? Do you know about it? Okay, for those of you who don't know, Highfield Regenerative Farm is an urban farm in Calgary. It's down by IKEA. This is probably its last season because they've lost their funding, which is super sad. But a massive community garden grew there, and a lot of the food that was grown there went up to the Alex Community Food Center. Are you familiar with that place? Okay, that's in the north, and you can access meals for free every day of the week at the Alex Community Food Center. It's far from here, but it's a super neat place. Anybody is welcome. They cook all kinds of food. So they were growing that food at Highfield Regenerative Farm. There's a lady called Vicki. She has the Basil Ranch, so she had a whole farm there. There's a massive greenhouse there, and all kinds of really interesting like composting initiatives and a way of bringing the community together. So I thought, well, this is kind of the perfect place for me to start some kind of community garden for trans youth. So with $0, just me, and a little bit of social media know-how, I just put out an ad and said, hey, are you like a mom or a dad or a parent of a trans kid? Would you like to connect through gardening? And we had that year, over the course of the summer, about 15 families that came every week to the Highfield Regenerative Farm, and we just gardened. We just gardened. We had one mom, she was a foster mom. She had like 6 kids. She brought them all every week, but one of her kids is two-spirit, on the autism spectrum, non-verbal, non-communicative, and they came every week and got their hands in the dirt, and by the end of it, we got like a little bit of connection with that kiddo. We felt like that was like a really big win, you know, really big win. Like the kid had their hands in the dirt, and even though they wouldn't talk, they were like painting, super talented artists, like painting, Indigenous art, stuff from their ways of knowing from childhood in the area. And so, did we grow a lot of food? No, not really. It cost me nothing, right? It was just a group of people gardening together. And in that little video there, what you saw was, like, without showing faces and stuff, just some of the little plots that we did. Of course, everything got painted with rainbows on it, right? And it was great. It was easy, and it was a beautiful way to bring everybody together. And because of the success of that, I thought to myself, okay, well, what am I going to do for 2024? So now it's fall, but you know, those families got to take some food home. They got to connect with other families in similar situations, and we created a community. I didn't want to let that die, right? So here were the results. Not much food grown, many birdhouses painted for sure, and about 12 to 15 families attended. I felt like that was a win, you know? So I was encouraged to keep going. So year 2, you can see this little video here. This is the garden we grew. And this is behind the Community Wise building, which is the old Y, right downtown on 12th Avenue, Southwest. So it's right in the Beltline. And what we did was, me and then the girl who I hired as our program director, who was from Highfield Regenerative Farm, we were like looking for a space. We actually thought about coming here, and because there's rooftops that you can garden on here, PS. Interesting to consider. And we thought to ourselves, maybe we should try again, but with containers, so that if we had to move, we could, right? And I was really concerned that as soon as you get like a group of 2S LGBTI people together, like rainbows come everywhere, right? Like just a lot of painting, a lot of art. But the problem with that is, are we keeping our communities safe? So I kind of wanted to be somewhere where we knew that the garden wouldn't be vandalized and that people would feel unsafe. So we found a community-wise building, and they gave us this concrete backyard. And it was really, really amazing. That's our logo there. That's us marching at Pride. And the most amazing thing that happened was the person, why isn't that playing? Hold on. Let's get him. Okay, so that fella there, that's me planting tobacco. So his name is Graham Masters. He is an Indigenous permaculturist and a chef, and he just happened to be, because of the way the universe works, the facilities manager at CommunityWise. So I met him on the first day, and I was like, this is incredible. What we've always wanted is Indigenous ways of knowing. We don't want to be, especially because I'm a white lady, right? I was like, I'm not going to come into your space and take it over and think I'm doing good and being all white savior about this. I want this to actually be a thing for everybody, and for me to be able to get out of the way and allow the community to do this together. And here comes Chef G, he's called G, and he's like, well, I'm Mi'kmaq, and I wanted to start a community garden. I used to have a restaurant in the city, and he's like, let's do this together. It was amazing. And so what he was doing in that video on our very first visit was we planted tobacco. It was the first thing we did. And the tobacco that year grew this tall. It was incredible. And we were able to dry it and give it to our community members. And so G brought that knowledge immediately to the garden space, where he was able to tie in the reason that the corvids were nesting on the roof, why we need to respect the crows, the magpies, and brought that to our community members. And there was another incredible organization in that building called Queer Calgary. And they were like, well, this is really cool. Like, is this just for trans kids? So I was like, no, like anybody can come. You just have to be an ally and be a nice person about it. And so they started telling their members. And at our peak in July, we had 50 people gardening back there. There was actually more people than there was gardening. It just became a party. It was so amazing. But what was happening was every week, people were coming. And we realized that we needed better infrastructure. So in this video here, you can see, this is like, look, there's nothing green, right? Nothing. All of these great folks from Queer Calgary and just from the queer community brought their tools, their trucks, their shovels, their labor. We built retaining walls, we hauled soil, and we made that concrete area a garden. It was amazing. And with G's guidance, we were able to bring that Indigenous perspective to the facility, and it made me feel a little bit better, like we were definitely respecting the land. The food that we grew that year went to the Beltline Community Fridge, which was on the same property, so given right back to the community residents of the Beltline, especially the unhoused community who use that fridge and are always looking for fresh produce and things like that. And then we gave it back to the queer community, to the people who had worked so hard to grow it, so it brought us all together. So we sowed tobacco, and then in the winter, we were like, well, guess what? Now we have this incredible group. We have 125 members at this point. What are we going to do in the winter? The plants aren't growing anymore, right? But can we still be together as a community? And so we started doing programming. And so here, that's my backyard. This is Friendsgiving. There was about 35 people there. We cooked the food that we grew at the garden, and we ate together. So there's an example of using food to bring a community together. Now, in the winter, we started teaching classes. So these two photos are a cooking class we did at Village Commons, which is right downtown, the other closer to like the Confluence. There's an incredible kitchen there. This cooking class had almost 50 people at it. And we all cooked together and we all ate together. G and I taught it together. So every time we did a class, G would tell a story about another sacred animal and its representation. And so we always got that Indigenous learning at the start of every story, or every class. And then January, February, this is our old program director, we started doing indoor plant care classes. We did a sprouting class. We had a spring social where we had Calgary's old poet laureate, Wakefield Brewster, did an incredible poem. We had an Indigenous artist there. So here's results from year 2. We worked our butts off, first of all. And we became a nonprofit society. So that's hard to do. But we wanted to have that nonprofit status to be able to apply for grants and funding. Because what was happening was people were coming, and we wanted to make sure that they were given,
resources and options and stuff to do all year long. They were forming a family and a community, and I wanted them to feel supported. So we applied for funding, we got funding. We grew some food, like I said, we gave it back to the community. We learned a lot about what grows in soil that's completely contaminated with cigarette butts and stuff like that at the start. We did it, but it's right downtown, and there was a lot of unsafe activity going on around there, which was really tough for the little kiddos and their families that were coming, and I found that they were getting discouraged. A lot of drug use in the area, community members not respecting our space, trashing it, stealing from it. So it's tough. It's like, how do you become a member of a community that needs a garden space, right? Where we're trying to help give people tools and resources to grow their own food, to learn how to do this, to feel empowered, that then we come to the space. I don't care that they take the food. If people want to take the food, then well, they must need it, right? But they stole stuff, and it's like that was really difficult for our members, especially members of a marginalized community that feel unsafe most of the time anyway, right? So we had to make the decision to leave that space, and that was really tough to do because we put our hard sweat equity into it, building those walls and hauling all of that dirt. But I would say overall, it was a pretty big success. And the most important part was that food literacy programming, like what I learned through my master's and through that research. We were allowed to do that and continue it all year long. And that, to me, that was a huge win. So that was really cool. Okay, so year 3 comes along. So now it's January of last year. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, okay, now we don't have a garden space. We have 125 members, right, who are looking for a place to garden. And what I was finding was the people that were our members were like people that are gentle, quiet, introverted, people who felt like that, especially in the queer community where there's a lot of events that have alcohol attached to it. These were people of all ages, from all different demographics, who were really happy to have a space that they felt was really theirs. So I didn't want that to go by the wayside either. So we're like, okay, let's keep looking for spaces. Now, we couldn't find anything at first, but we thought, well, we better start some seeds. Because guess what? That's part of growing food, right? I didn't want to buy a whole bunch of plants. We didn't have that money. Why would we not be learning regenerative agriculture and the whole cycle of agriculture as we were doing this together? So I went around to different greenhouses and different seed companies, and I got this massive donation of seeds that was, I would like to point out, eventually stolen. Probably about $400 worth of seeds were stolen out of our shed at our new space. And I was like, I hope they're using them. I don't know what to say about that. So they got stolen, and so what I did was I thought, you know what, it's time to call in community partners, because community gardens shouldn't exist in a silo, right? We should be doing this together. So I reached out to the Alex Community Food Center, and they have an incredible gardening program up there. And Graham Masters, actually moved over to the Alex, and he's now the Director of Indigenous Programming up there. So I knew he was up there, and I popped in there and I said, do you guys have any extra seeds? We just got $400 worth of seeds stolen, and I don't have any more money. And they were like, of course we have seeds for you. And I said, well, you know what's interesting? I have a greenhouse space. So my sister has this just like incredible greenhouse, like a dream. It's like, heated floors, and it's humidity controlled, and the windows like do the thing, and it's huge, and it's lovely. And she's like, I don't know anything about gardening. I think I'll just store things out here. And I was like, no way, girl. We are using this space. We're going to grow some seeds in here. So I said to the Alex, I'll tell you what, you give me seeds, how about we start with plants for you? And then the Alex went to Confluence. Have you ever seen the Confluence garden? So it's behind what used to be Fort Calgary. It's a huge circle garden. Right by there's a big sort of windmill clock tower thing there. Sunflowers in the middle, and then it's all sectioned off into different sort of pie-shaped stuff. Right by the river. And the Alex was using the Confluence as garden space. So see, now we're all working together. This community garden programming is starting to become a social movement. And if you've ever noticed, like if you have a community garden in your neighborhood, what's the thing you notice about it the most? Probably that each plot is owned by somebody individually, right? So a family uses a plot and they grow food for themselves. Super glad they're growing food, happy they're out there doing it, glad they're supporting the community in that way. But our kind of gardening was bringing social communities together to garden together. Why do we have to be just growing food just for ourselves when we could be growing it for other people too? And using the brain trust and the resources of all of these different incredible people, from Chef G all the way to the gardening coordinator at the Alex Community Center, to the Horticulture Society got involved, to the Confluence and their garden programmer, and now we're all gardening together and we're growing food for the community. So to me now this is working, right? So we start growing the seeds for the Alex, and then we find ourselves space. You guys familiar with Sun Alta? So this community, do you know where the elevated train station is? Yeah, so this is just across the street. So this is the old Sun Alta Community Center, which is 100 years old. And their garden back there has been around for 25 years. That's their garden right there. That's their community garden. But they got a grant to build this sort of boring gray building. And I went to them and I was like, do you have any space like within your community? This is like a really accepting and open community. It's still downtown. It's really accessible by transit. It serves all kinds of people. It's checking all the boxes. I can see like pride flags in the windows. I'm like, okay, yeah, this feels like a pretty safe community. And they're like, do you want this entire backyard for free? And I was like, yes, we do. That's great. So that's what that space is right there. It was nothing at all. And then they have another community garden in, there was a house there at one point, and then the land got donated by a resident, so it can never be built on, and they have a wildflower garden. So they said to us, would your members, until you get your veggie garden going, would your members like to use the wildflower garden just to meet at? And like, of course we would, right? It's this incredible garden that has a native plant area. It's got like an alpine plant area. It's got indigenous herbs in one area. So again, like that really great influence of community working together, but mostly it's like flowers and things, right? Fruiting trees, that kind of thing. So, perfect. So what do? Well, first we start growing the seeds. This is the greenhouse. And I don't know, this doesn't look like a lot of plants, but if you keep in mind that every single one of those little blocks is a plant, we grew hundreds of plants. We gave, I think I have a photo of it. Oh no, maybe not. Anyway, this is the garden. We gave it like probably 100 plants to the Alex. So we got all of these pots. My sister, same house, not a gardener. She was like, do you also want 40 giant pots from whoever lived here before? And we were like, yes, of course we do. And so we plotted out what the garden would look like. And this is kind of what we ended up with. And these beds here, we bought from a local company. One of them got delivered to my front doorstep and promptly a porch pirate stole it. And I called them and I was like, I'm so sorry, like just so that you know it wasn't delivered. And they're like, we'll just give you another one. The work you guys are doing is amazing. So that was really great. And then eventually in that top corner there, another fella came along. He's a resident of Sun Alta, not a part of the Fur community. But he's like, hey, I'm a regen ag farmer and I'm gonna farm the yards in Sun Alta. Just farm the residents' yards. It's just grass. Why would we not grow food where grass was, right? And so we put a plot in that corner for him and he grew like this many carrots, which he gave back to the Sun Alta community. So that's what it looked like sort of in about May. And then it starts to grow. And now you can see that's my son watering over there. This is July. And we started to learn some things this year. So year before in the backyard of the Community Wise building, there was lots of shade. We had no shade. We had like so much sun exposure, and we realized very quickly that the plants were not growing very well. We needed to figure out why. And we brought in these two remarkable people. So the person with the hat on, that's Michelle. And she she's the head researcher at SAFE in their environmental department. And she applied for funding to fund the Rainbow Garden for the rest of the season and for us to do a study on the social impact of community gardening. And then she hired Sarah, who's on the left there, who's a landscape architect. And Sarah started to work with the movement of the sun and plan it out for us and figure out, we tested the pH of the soil, we figured out the pots weren't draining, right? So they were like, you know, they were getting really root bound, so the food wasn't growing well. We made corrections, but we were so grateful for their support because the garden would not have gone as well without their expertise. And of course the rainbows started to come and we started to paint, right? And we found that a lot of our members were actually not that interested in gardening, especially like the really hard work. There was like a core group of people that really liked to shovel dirt and things like that, but everybody else just wanted to come and be somewhere peaceful and feel safe and be together. So we painted, and then we made this incredible living compost pile. We're so proud of this. So this is Mike, he's from Karuna Compost, which is a really neat organization in the city. And the city of Calgary funded a workshop that he ran for us. He brought all of these different mediums of soil in, and then together we built this giant pile where every day he would come and test the temperature, and that girl was cooking. Like, it was getting super hot. It was like 96 degrees, it was steaming, so all the microbes were doing their work. What was so incredible about that project was when he presented the project, he talked about like the non-binary nature of microbes and also how microbes work together as a community and how there is no discrimination, how all of the microbes work with each other to make the soil healthy for us, and how we are a part of that, because then of course those microbes are in our gut. We eat that, right? So that was like a very enriching and super cool project that lasted the rest of the summer. And if we did it again next year, we would decorate that pile. It was really neat. And so yeah, here's the fruits of our labor. We did grow food. We did a pretty good job. We gardened in the rain. We gardened in the heat. And every week we probably had between 10 and 15 people, but still about 120 people who were members who received our newsletter each week. So super proud of the results there. And what's come out of that garden is now Sunelta and us and the Queer Art Society are working together on a mural, which will be going on the side of those gray panels there. With an Indigenous artist and a newcomer to Canada from Jamaica. And the two of them are going to make a mural on the side of the building. So that will be a legacy. We're super excited for that. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that there will be something that will stay there, right? Because again, all that hard work. So now we're at the point where we've got to take the garden down. This was a sad day, you know, like, there's, you know, that birth and death cycle that happens in nature. We got to the garden that day and this is our last day gardening, and we had a big arch that vines were growing up, and somebody from the community stole it. They stole the whole arch. Yeah, I know. And it was like this big and about that tall, and it had netting and it had rainbow twinkle lights. It was really pretty. But we did get feedback from the community, like some neighbors that were like, you know, somebody's gonna take that down and use it as a weapon. And we were like, well, we're just gonna have to trust and do our best. But somebody did, in fact, take it down, which was crummy. And we had other struggles too. We definitely found a lot of needles and garbage in the area. The space wasn't as well respected as I hoped it would be. But the thing is, we chose to be in an inner city community where there are all sorts of different people doing different things. And the way that I looked at it was like, those folks, if they were coming into the garden to use, they were coming there because they felt safe there, right? They were sleeping there. We had many encampments that were set up. And it was really interesting because obviously, well, maybe this isn't obvious to some of you, but in the queer community, you know, there's resistance to police officers. We definitely don't want to be using their services unless we have to be. And we had some days where the cops were there dismantling encampments, and our members were like, this isn't fair, these people belong in this community too, you know, and trying to constantly dismantle that social construct that our authorities have put in place, which, you know, in their eyes keep us safe. But our members didn't feel safe when the authorities were on the property. So it was this really interesting balance of like us getting upset because our stuff was getting stolen and vandalized, but also seeing our members feeling protective of the folks who, you know, had barriers to housing, social services, and food. So, you know, it wasn't Pollyanna, and we were not in a garden in the suburbs of South Calgary. We were doing really good work that had its struggles. And I just think it's really important to mention that it's like this, and there's a flow and a balance. I always kind of felt like if people wanted to stay there overnight, like as long as they cleaned up in the morning, cool, right? Help yourself to some carrots, it's all good, right? Like we felt great about that, no problem. It didn't always happen that way, and I won't get into details, but there were some real struggles there sometimes. But overall, these people, so they allowed me to put their photos up. These smiles are incredibly genuine smiles. This garden program has changed lives. It has helped folks feel included. It has helped folks feel a sense of belonging. It has educated them, right, in the ways of food literacy, that we have learned to cook, we have learned how to plant, we have learned how to grow, we have learned how to remediate when things don't grow properly, we have learned how to exist in a social structure in a downtown community. And overall, I feel like the garden itself has been a massive success. So with your lens that I gave you at the start, I'd like to know from you, did we do decolonizing work? And can you tell me how? Take a guess. Why is this decolonizing work?
So you're building a community where you're incorporating the Indigenous knowledge and seeing everyone as equal.
Yeah, did everybody hear that? Building a community, incorporating Indigenous knowledge, seeing everyone as equal.
Adding on to what you said, we also give Indigenous people a voice instead of using your voice, and come into their space and act and see your work.
Yeah, like respecting the space that's already there that is Indigenous space. Not coming into it, steamrolling it because I know better, and, you know, and also like, I don't know, I try to think, okay, I have privilege, that's just how it is for me, that's my life. How can I use that, right, to do more decolonizing and reconciliation work? So I hope I did that. I think I'm always learning. G taught me, I was kind of hoping he'd be here, and it would actually be so great to have him come in to talk to the class, because he's Mi'kmaq, he's got a huge personality, he's a huge storyteller, he's a gardener, a permaculturist, a chef. He would be great to have here, and he works at the Alex. But he taught me so much about the land that we were working on and in that I didn't understand, you know? There's another garden project in the city, and I'm not gonna name names, but they were doing a land acknowledgement one day there and actually talking about how excited they were to be taking over the land. And I was like, did that just come out of that person's mouth during a land acknowledgement? Like it didn't have anything to do with how are we using the land that we are so fortunate to be able to use, right? It was like, this is great, we're gonna do this, we're doing this, it's gonna be better, we're gonna make money, there's gonna be profit, right? And so on the topic of profit, along with the community and the social aspect, what's the other thing that is decolonizing about what a community garden does? But you probably talked about this in class. Gardening is subversive. It's an act of rebellion, right? How? Because by gardening, we are not saying, I'm okay with spending
$7 on a loaf of bread, I'm not okay with spending $5 on that cauliflower. I am going to work against the system, right? To grow food and be autonomous with food, to have food for our families. So it's not just gardening. It's canning, it's preserving, it's cooking, it's eating together. It's not eating through a drive-through window. All those things are subversive. They may not be possible all the time, especially when you're on a budget and you're a student. Like, how do you grow your own epic garden when you're just trying to exist? But even just having the filter to be able to say, if I buy some basil seeds and I put them on my window ledge and a little bit of dirt, I am growing basil. That if I bought it at the grocery store, it's going to be $5 for a package that is plastic, right? With like a gram of basil in it. But when you grow a plant on your windowsill, now you're in control. So now you're able to use that.
So it's subverting the entire capitalistic ways of seeing producing the food system.
Right? So instead of saying, I'm so used to my food coming through a drive-through window, no, we're working for it a little bit. That's okay. It's rewarding. It's really rewarding. You guys are super big talkers, so I'm going to ask you one more question. What can we do better at the Rainbow Garden Society with everything that you've seen in the story that I've told? Do you have a suggestion for me? How next year, when we start our seeds in January, how can I do even better? Ideas? As far as decolonizing reconciliation work goes. What can we do better? Can I tell more stories? Story work is decolonizing work. So the podcast that I have, that I've had to let die right now because I'm busy, which doesn't make me any money, I want to keep going with that. I want to keep telling stories. And guess what? I'm really careful with the guests that I select. I don't really feel like I need to tell the story of celebrity chefs. Do you know what I'm saying? Their stories don't need hearing. G's story needs hearing. We need to hear what G is doing. How is he doing it? How can we learn from him? So telling stories. What else could I do? Yeah.
Maybe incorporate music somehow.
Oh my God, I love that idea. Music. Yeah, especially Indigenous music, right? So more festivals, events. Actually, we did an event. There was like an Indigenous porch event that was so cool. G brought in all these Indigenous artists right on the front porch of Community Wise last year. It was incredible. He paid them all fairly. That's an important thing, right? Equity for Indigenous artists. But like 15 people showed up. I was heartbroken. I was like, how come there isn't 400 people here? You know what I mean? And there was all these incredible like jingle skirt dancers and stuff, and they were right in front of Community Wise, and people were just like walking past. So how can we help that, right? How do we support that? For sure, music's such a big part. Yeah.
Which music do you mean?
Any music, I guess, that has cultural significance.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you ask?
Because again, the same problem, mindset. I think we need to deconstruct also the meaning of music, meaning of dance and cultural activities. As you said, that Indigenous artists were dancing, they were singing, but people didn't pay much attention.
Pay any attention? I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, is this because it wasn't promoted well? No, of course he did a great job promoting it, right? All the volunteers were watching, all of the people that were there, but the people out front, nothing.
Yeah, people want Western music, right?
Western music, especially in Calgary. Oh, and I forgot to mention, that happened to be the same week as the Stampede that we did that event. That was on purpose, right? We wanted people to have an alternative to the Stampede. So, yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Any feedback, comments, questions? If you are interested in joining us next year at the Rainbow Garden Society, you can send us an email. I screen every member myself. I think that's really important. Anybody can come. So you just go to rainbowgardensociety.org.
If you want to check out my podcast, which interviews all kinds of people, different genders, different cultures, about food and what their food stories are. Podcast is called Food Stories. You can find it everywhere, although I think I'd like to take it off Spotify. Lately, that's my new thing. Not happy with those guys these days, but yeah. Any questions?
Do you have any link to share? I mean, about your podcasts?
I did.
Can you please show that?
I put it